On June 21, 2025, the world awoke to a seismic shift, one that would send shockwaves through global politics and forever alter the balance of power in the Middle East. As the first rays of sunlight crept over Tehran, millions of people across the globe tuned in to breaking news, their eyes glued to screens, trying to make sense of the chaos unfolding in real time. In a meticulously coordinated operation, the United States launched precision airstrikes on Iran's most critical nuclear facilities. The world watched in disbelief as footage emerged of missiles streaking through the night sky, targeting sites that had long been at the center of international tension and negotiation. Just after 2 a.m. local time, American bombers struck Natanz, Fordow, and Isfahan, locations synonymous with Iran's nuclear ambitions. The attacks were swift and devastating, aimed at crippling the infrastructure that powered Iran's controversial nuclear program. Explosions lit up the night, sending plumes of smoke into the sky and leaving the world to wonder what would come next. This marked the first direct U.S. military strike on Iranian soil since the 1979 hostage crisis, instantly escalating a simmering regional conflict into a full-blown global emergency. World leaders scrambled to respond, convening emergency meetings and issuing urgent calls for restraint, as the United Nations Security Council held a rare overnight session. The airstrikes came after weeks of mounting hostilities between Israel and Iran, including a massive Iranian drone barrage on Israeli territory that left cities on edge and air defenses stretched to their limits. The region had been teetering on the brink, and now, the threshold had been crossed. U.S. officials described the operation as a necessary and preemptive move, claiming intelligence pointed to an imminent nuclear threat that could not be ignored. At a tense Pentagon press conference, military leaders outlined the objectives and insisted that every effort had been made to avoid civilian casualties. For ordinary Iranians, it was a night of terror and confusion. Families huddled in basements, children cried as sirens wailed, and the uncertainty of what might follow hung heavy in the air. Around the world, news outlets broadcast live updates, analysts debated the consequences, and social media erupted with fear and outrage. As dawn broke, military convoys mobilized across the Middle East and city streets remained eerily quiet. International diplomats rushed to contain the fallout, but the risk of a much wider war now loomed over the region, threatening to draw in neighboring countries and global powers alike. The full repercussions of this fateful decision are only beginning to unfold. The world holds its breath, uncertain of what the next chapter will bring in this rapidly escalating crisis. The U.S. operation was a display of cutting-edge military technology and strategic planning, designed to send a clear message to both allies and adversaries. The mission's objective was to achieve maximum impact on Iran's nuclear capabilities, while minimizing civilian casualties and collateral damage. Every detail, from the timing of the strikes to the selection of targets, was meticulously calculated to ensure effectiveness and precision. Under the cover of darkness, B-2 stealth bombers and Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from a carrier group in the Persian Gulf targeted Iran's most sensitive nuclear sites. Natanz, Fordow, and Isfahan, facilities at the heart of Iran's nuclear infrastructure, were struck in a coordinated assault, aiming to cripple Iran's ability to enrich uranium and develop nuclear weapons. President Trump, addressing the nation from the White House, confirmed that a full payload was dropped on Fordow, one of the most heavily fortified underground sites. The use of bunker-busting munitions underscored the seriousness of the operation, and the intent to neutralize even the most protected elements of Iran's program. The Pentagon justified the attack as a direct response to intelligence reports indicating that Iran was just days away from reaching weapons-grade uranium enrichment. Military officials emphasized that the operation was not only preemptive but also necessary to prevent a significant escalation in the region. "We took decisive action to prevent a nuclear Iran," Trump declared, standing alongside his national security advisors. The administration framed the strike as a last resort after diplomatic efforts had failed to halt Iran's nuclear ambitions. In the aftermath, satellite images revealed massive craters and collapsed structures at the targeted sites. The International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed significant damage to Iran's nuclear facilities, but reported that so far, there were no hazardous radioactive leaks detected. The attack also crippled Fordow's electrical and support infrastructure, leaving the facility inoperable and dealing a critical blow to Iran's nuclear program. Power lines were severed, and key substations were destroyed, further hampering any immediate recovery efforts. While the strikes were executed with remarkable precision, the consequences are proving to be widespread and severe. Emergency response teams rushed to the damaged sites, assessing the full extent of the destruction and beginning the long process of recovery. As the world watches, governments and international organizations are now grappling with the fallout of the attack. The repercussions are being felt far beyond the region, raising urgent questions about the future of nuclear nonproliferation and global security. Iran's response was swift and defiant. State TV called the attack an act of war. Leaders vowed powerful retaliation. Supreme Leader Khamenei declared, "This aggression will not go unanswered," and moved to a secure bunker, naming successors in case of assassination. Iran expelled all IAEA inspectors and ended nuclear transparency, fueling fears of unchecked nuclear activity. The military went on highest alert, missile batteries activated, and officials relocated underground. Iran is bracing for further attacks, and preparing its own counteroffensive. The airstrikes triggered global shockwaves. Russia and China condemned the attack, with Moscow putting missile units on alert, and Beijing demanding a UN Security Council session. European allies expressed deep concern, questioning the necessity and timing of the strikes, exposing rifts within the Western alliance. Gulf states feared radioactive fallout, while Turkey offered to mediate. In the US, the decision split opinion. Some praised the action as necessary, others condemned it as reckless and unconstitutional. The world is now on edge, fearing uncontrollable escalation. Diplomatic channels are strained, and the risk of a broader conflict is real. The international community faces a critical test. The aftermath pushed the region to the brink of war. US troops in Iraq and Syria and Israeli forces went on high alert. More American air assets deployed to Saudi Arabia. Oil prices soared 20% in a day, threatening global inflation and economic slowdown. The Strait of Hormuz, a vital oil choke point, is now at risk. Iran's proxy network, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and militias in Iraq threaten attacks on US and Israeli interests. Cyber attacks on US infrastructure have surged, likely from Iranian state actors. The conflict now spans land, sea, and cyberspace. The economic and security fallout is global, not just regional. The world is bracing for further shocks. The crisis is far from contained. With diplomacy at a standstill and tensions at their highest in years, the world is holding its breath, anxiously awaiting Iran's next move. The uncertainty is palpable, as leaders and citizens alike wonder what the coming days will bring. Direct missile strikes on US assets remain a real possibility, but most experts believe Iran will rely on its network of proxy groups to retaliate. These groups, spread across the region, can strike American interests and allies, making the situation even more unpredictable. Iran's foreign minister has firmly ruled out any talks while under attack, signaling a hardening stance. Meanwhile, President Pezeshkian has hinted that Iran might consider returning to nuclear limits if the strikes cease, though this gesture is widely seen as insufficient to change the US position. Analysts are now debating the true impact of the recent strikes on Iran's nuclear program. Some estimate the damage could delay progress by several months, while others believe it might set Iran back by a few years. The lack of clear information only adds to the uncertainty. In response to the escalating violence, the US is urgently evacuating its citizens from Israel and the West Bank. Airports are crowded, and embassy officials are working around the clock, as many fear that the worst may still be ahead. The human toll is devastating. Hundreds have lost their lives and thousands more are injured, most of them innocent civilians caught in the crossfire. Hospitals are overwhelmed and families are left searching for loved ones. Both US and Iranian leaders now find themselves locked in a dangerous cycle of escalation. For both sides, backing down could be seen as weakness, making any move toward de-escalation politically risky and unlikely in the near term. The costs, both human and political, are mounting with each passing day. Grieving families, destroyed neighborhoods, and heated debates in government chambers all underscore the growing price of this conflict. As peace talks falter and the region braces for more violence, the path to a lasting resolution seems more distant than ever. The world watches, hoping for a breakthrough but fearing that the worst is yet to come. As the dust settles, the Middle East stands at a crossroads. The US strikes shattered taboos, raising the risk of a spiraling regional war. Iran's expulsion of inspectors and secrecy make the nuclear threat harder to gauge. Global divisions, US versus Russia and China, rifts with Europe, undermine diplomatic solutions. Mediators like Turkey face slim odds in this climate of hostility. The stakes, a wider war, economic crisis, and a possible nuclear arms race. The world holds its breath, hoping for restraint in a time of peril. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.